Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Let me ask you something. How many times have you studied English? Maybe you studied it at school for many years. Maybe you memorized hundreds of vocabulary words. Maybe you studied grammar rules, watched English lessons, read books, downloaded language learning apps, and even practiced writing English sentences. But when it is finally time to speak, something strange happens. The words disappear. You understand the question, but you cannot answer quickly. You may understand English when someone speaks slowly, but when a native speaker talks naturally, you suddenly feel lost, and then you start thinking, maybe my English isn't good enough. But what if that isn't the real problem? What if you don't need to study more? What if you simply need to speak more? The truth is that knowing English and being able to use English are two different things. You can know hundreds or even thousands of words and still feel nervous during a conversation. That is because speaking is a skill. And just like any other skill, it needs practice. Think about your first language. When you speak your native language, you usually don't translate every sentence in your head. You don't stop and think about every grammar rule. You simply think and speak. If you are hungry, you say, "I'm hungry." If you need help, you say, "Can you help me?" If you want some water, you say, "I'm thirsty." The words come naturally because you have heard and used them thousands of times. English can become more natural in exactly the same way. You need exposure, you need listening, you need speaking, and most importantly, you need repetition. That is why one of the simplest methods for improving your English is listen, speak, repeat. Don't worry about being perfect. You don't need perfect grammar. You don't need an enormous vocabulary. And you don't need to sound like a native speaker. Your goal is communication. If you make a mistake, continue. If you forget a word, find another way to say it. If your pronunciation isn't perfect, keep practicing. Every mistake gives your brain another opportunity to learn. One of the biggest mistakes English learners make is waiting until they are ready. They think, I'll start speaking when my grammar is better. I'll speak when I know more vocabulary. I'll speak when I'm confident. But confidence usually doesn't come before practice. Confidence comes from practice. You become confident because you keep doing something even when it feels difficult. Imagine someone who wants to become physically strong, but never exercises because they aren't strong yet. That doesn't make sense. The same thing happens with English. You cannot wait until you are fluent before you start speaking. You have to speak in order to become fluent. And you don't need complicated sentences. Start with simple English that you can actually use. For example, I'm tired. I'm hungry. I need to go to work. I'm leaving now. I'll call you later. I don't understand. Could you say that again? These sentences may look extremely simple, but simple English is powerful when you can use it automatically. You can practice these sentences during your normal daily activities. When you wake up, describe what you are doing. You can say, "It's time to get up. I'm tired this morning. I didn't sleep well last night. I need a cup of coffee. I'm getting ready for work." You don't need to sit at a desk for 5 hours. You can practice while preparing breakfast. You can practice while cleaning your room. You can practice while walking. You can even spend 10 minutes before bed speaking English to yourself. The important thing is consistency. 10 minutes every day is better than several hours once a month, because language learning happens through repeated exposure. At first, A sentence may feel difficult. You may need to think about every word. But after hearing and saying it many times, something changes. The sentence becomes familiar. Eventually, you don't need to translate it. You simply understand it. And one day, you may notice something surprising. Someone asks you a question in English, and you answer without thinking. The words simply come. That moment doesn't happen by accident. It comes from practice. Another important skill is learning to think in English. And don't make this complicated. You don't have to think about complex subjects. Start with what you can see around you. Look at a chair and think, this is a chair. Look at your phone. My phone is on the table. Look outside. The window is open. If you're tired, I'm tired. If you're hungry, I'm hungry. This simple exercise helps connect English directly to your thoughts instead of forcing you to translate everything from your first language. You may need to think about every word, but after hearing and saying it many times, something changes. The sentence becomes familiar. Eventually, you don't need to translate it. You simply understand it. And one day, you may notice something surprising. Someone asks you a question in English, and you answer without thinking. The words simply come. That moment doesn't happen by accident. It comes from practice. Another important skill is learning to think in English. And don't make this complicated. You don't have to think about complex subjects. Start with what you can see around you. Look at a chair and think, this is a chair. Look at your phone. My phone is on the table. Look outside. The window is open. If you're tired, I'm tired. If you're hungry, I'm hungry. This simple exercise helps connect English directly to your thoughts instead of forcing you to translate everything from your first language. You should also learn useful phrases for real conversations. For example, when you don't understand someone, don't panic. You can say, "Could you say that again, please? Could you speak a little more slowly? I'm sorry I didn't understand." These aren't signs of weak English. They are signs of communication. Even fluent speakers sometimes ask people to repeat themselves. So don't feel embarrassed when you don't understand every word. Your goal isn't to understand 100% of everything. Your goal is to understand enough to continue the conversation. And this brings us to another important point. You don't need thousands of words to communicate. Sometimes learners spend too much time collecting vocabulary, but not enough time using it. Knowing a word isn't enough. You need to use it. A smaller vocabulary that you can use confidently is often more useful than a huge vocabulary that you never speak. So instead of asking yourself, how many English words do I know? Ask, how many English words can I actually use? That question can completely change your learning strategy. Now imagine yourself 3 months from today. Suppose you listen to English every day. You speak every day. You repeat useful sentences. You stop being afraid of mistakes. You practice thinking in English. Will you suddenly become perfect? Probably not. But you can become better. You may understand more. You may respond faster. You may feel less nervous. You may be able to introduce yourself, talk about your family, describe your daily routine, ask questions, express your opinions, and communicate with other people more comfortably. That is real progress. So don't make English learning unnecessarily complicated. You don't need to wait for the perfect course. You don't need to memorize every grammar rule before speaking. You don't need to know every word in the dictionary. Start with what you already know. Listen, speak, Repeat, use the language, and do it again tomorrow. Remember these sentences. I can speak English. I may make mistakes, but mistakes help me learn. I don't need to be perfect. I just need to keep practicing. I will listen every day. I will speak every day. I will improve one day at a time. These aren't just English sentences. They are a mindset. Because sometimes the biggest obstacle isn't your English. It's fear. Fear of making mistakes, fear of sounding foolish, fear of being judged. But remember this: nobody becomes fluent without making mistakes. Mistakes are part of the process. So don't wait. Start speaking with the English you already have. If you know 10 useful sentences, use those 10 sentences. If you know 100 words, use those words. Then slowly add more. Little by little, your vocabulary will grow. Your pronunciation will improve. Your listening will become stronger. And your confidence will increase. You were never incapable of learning English. You simply needed more opportunities to use it. So from today, don't only ask yourself, how much English did I study? Ask yourself, how much English did I listen to? How much English did I speak? How many times did I use English today? Those questions will change the way you learn. You don't need to be perfect today. You only need to be better than yesterday. So take a deep breath, relax, and say it with confidence. I can speak English. Again, I can speak English. And one more time, I can speak English. And I will keep practicing until speaking feels natural. Keep listening, keep speaking, keep practicing. And most importantly, keep believing that you can improve, because you can.